Hey everybody, this is Dr. Flight. Hope you're doing great. It's good to touch base with you. This little video is a introduction to teamwork and project teams. This is a generic video in the sense that it would apply to lots of different team environments. In a course where you're part of a team, you're thrown together with a group of people who you may or may not really know very well. The objective of the team should still be to work cohesively, minimize conflict, and maximize the synergy that your team has among team members to do the best project possible. This would be true in a work environment or anywhere. So, teamwork is inevitably something that you will encounter in your work environment. It is incredibly rare that anybody does a job on their own without the support and input from others. That's why it's emphasized so heavily in business curriculum, just in general, especially graduate school level work oftentimes has a team component, and this is something that we very often will measure as an outcome of learning. It's a skill to learn how to be a part of a team, how to lead a team, how to participate in a team. So it's a skill to develop and one that's worth working towards. So that's why this video is put together, just to kind of offer a little again, overview that would apply to lots of scenarios that you would be in. So pros and cons to having a team in general. So the benefits typically are that if you have a very large project, you can break that project up and by division of labor, if you will, be able to tackle huge, enormous projects which seem impossible by one person, but also do them, not only achieve the problem or achieve the goal, but also do them in a relatively concise period of time. So that's something all businesses, organizations want to be able to do. Also, we understand that many people have different talents, and some people lack talents that others have. And so being able to share those skill sets across individuals in a group means that any individual person doesn't have to be great at everything, as long as what you are great at, you bring to the table, and you can help the team in that capacity. Certainly, there are challenges and there are many pitfalls. If you've been in a group environment before, you may have experienced a group that didn't function very well or very function efficiently, or maybe the end result didn't turn out the way you had hoped, and you have blamed the team, or you see the team as the failure in the process. So communication, we'll mention that again here in a little bit, is super important. Being able to let everybody get involved, everybody, this group think concept where it's not just one person's vision driving everybody else, but it's everybody going along with and agreeing on a course of action. Being able to work with a concerted effort where project moves from stage 1 to 2 to 3, and making that momentum happen while simultaneously focusing on the immediate task at hand. All projects are conceived by steps. And understanding and maybe even deriving what those steps are is a key thing that your team needs to do, understand and even create those process steps so that the end goal is achieved. So often you have an end goal and you know what that is, but you might not have the roadmap that will help you get there, and your team has to think about that and move along and let the ball roll. And once it gets rolling, then you can gain momentum and finish the project. And certainly there are going to be issues associated with personalities and misaligned goals. Sometimes in a business setting, you have individuals on the team who are using the project for self promotion. They want to get ahead. They want to be the leader. They want to do something that will promote their self interests. um, at the detriment of the group's self-interest or collective interests. So when we have dueling goals like that, that's where a lot of conflict happens and unmet expectations take place because individuals are too focused on what they can get out of the project as opposed to what the overall project's going to be and how the success of the end goal will look. So I mentioned communication. Communication is super important, as you can imagine. Everybody has to communicate. However, there's a cost to communication, especially when the groups get large. So when you have one message going out to everybody, that's one concept. Another concept, though, is if you have everybody communicating to everybody individually, then that magnifies by a great deal the number of total messages. So that's why this multiplier effect when you choose a form of communications that's one-on-one with larger groups. So thinking about how communication is going to happen will be impacted by the size of the group and the methods that you certainly use. Every time you communicate, there are opportunities to misspeak or state something that you didn't need to or want to. That's called a miscommunication. But this doesn't have to always be the case. So being concise in what you say, but also being accurate in what you say, not adding a lot of filler that doesn't matter to the conversation, that's going to distract others is important. And being able to set clear expectations of what's going to happen. There's two things that I think of when I think of communication, and this lies largely when we look at like business to business communication. If you have a supplier or an external agency that you're doing work with, the frequency of communication and the value of that communication that you're making, the level of intimacy, for instance, or the level of sensitivity of the information. The more that is, and the more frequently it happens, the stronger a relationship is, and a stronger relationship bond forms. So think about the quality of your information that you're sending to each other, and whether you're communicating frequently or not. Also, using tools that will help everybody communicate simultaneously, like group emails, chat groups, of course, Teams, Microsoft Teams, where you can form a team and communicate to everybody at once. It's far more efficient than individual types of communications. So let's talk a little bit about team structures, kind of as we kind of progress here. And this simple quote from Kazenbach and Smith: a team is a set of people with complementary skills. That means skills that go together, right? Who are committed to one common purpose, performance goals, and approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable. So when the team succeeds, you all succeed. When the team fails, no individual fails, you all fail in your efforts. And it's built on a common understanding of what you're going to achieve, how you know you're going to reach success, and the process that you're going to use to get there. So there's three kind of things that are here. So if you're in a group project, as a group, identify what your purpose is, what you want to end up with. How will you be evaluated based on what that deliverable is that you end up with at the end of the day? And what will the steps need to be for us to achieve that goal at the performance outcomes we want to achieve them at? Those three things are going to be vitally important for any group to kind of consider. Now, you don't have to mull this over for long periods of time, but if you want to have a successful group, this is how you lay out your plan to be able to do it. So this is certainly tricky, right? You're balancing all these things at once: progress towards the goal, projects towards what you want to accomplish at the end of this, where that expertise and knowledge is going to come from. That complementary skill aspect of that quote kind of comes in here. Certain members of your team will have certain expertise in elements that will contribute. And so being able to identify who will do what and what skills they have is kind of important. And as I mentioned already, this idea of structure, or communication. So thinking about team structure, though, there are a couple different models that you might be familiar with. And I'm just going to show two here. One is called the Dominion model, where there's a clear leader or authority figure where a lot of responsibility for the end results lies on that one person. This is a hierarchy structure that we're very used to. We've seen this around. We expect there to be a leader and followers, and the followers trust the leader's vision, and the leader trusts that the followers will accomplish the tasks that they have assigned to them. One of the challenges here is sometimes if the weakest link is your leader, or if there are faults in that leadership vision, then it contaminates the entire project process. So that's a challenge. It's a weak. Now, if the leader is approachable, if the leader is willing to listen to others kind of in a advisatory way, then some of those issues can be mitigated. However, if the leader is forceful, if they are committed strongly to their vision, but their vision is flawed, then obviously problems exist. And not everybody feels on board. Not everybody feels like they're part of the process at that point, where it's the leader's project and it's theirs to succeed or fail, and the others are just along for the ride, so they don't really feel that ownership component. Another model, second model, is called the communion model, and this is more of a community-focused thing where there's a shared responsibility among everybody on the team. There's not a specific sense of a leader. However, everybody is obligated to take ownership. So if the project becomes disastrous, then everybody should feel like it's their fault. It's their responsibility. It was their fault because they had a stake in the ownership of it. This is something that people may not necessarily be used to, especially if you are in a system where you're not expected to take responsibility per se for the results of a project. Then you might feel uncomfortable with that. You may also feel uncomfortable calling out your peers when they underperform. And this is like a critical issue, especially with student learners who are don't really know their teammates particularly well. They don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. They don't want to come off as a negative person or whatever. So as opposed to highlighting a issue that is involved with a peer, and it's different when you're calling out a leader and an issue, but if it's a peer and you're calling them out, then that's problematic because it doesn't get the best result of everything that's there. There's also this idea of a weakest link. If everybody's a shared component, but one component's weaker, then that may inhibit the entire project unless the others pick up the weak link's work. If the others say, no, that was Joe's job, and Joe was responsible for it, so our project didn't come together, that's not going to work. The others have to pick up the weakest link's work in order to be able to pull through, and sometimes this model is not going to recognize that. So we have to be careful about how that goes. Okay, so some common factors on good teams: clear role responsibilities. Each person is accountable for their own work, and they know what they're going to do and when it's due and what the expectations are. So those expectations need to be monitored. So if somebody in your group produces a piece of work that isn't great, they need to know about it. It needs to be fixed. And so you have to establish those roles of monitoring, checking, proofreading each other's work, so that everything works out well. again, third time I've mentioned this now, strong communication systems that are available, credible, and ones where you can follow a conversation, where there's, again, follow up. Um, uh, it's best if problems are addressed immediately, but it's also best if in a group you're able to communicate as opposed to unilaterally a one-to-one communication among teammates. Group think is far better than individual think when it comes to anything like that. And then finally, as you walk through the project, it's important to, again, focus on that end result, but keep things fact based. Um, Make decisions based on what will achieve the result that you want, not because somebody's feelings might get hurt or because somebody um, is jockeying for a higher position or a better outcome for an individual outcome for themselves. Those things can't get in the way of progress towards the goal. So keeping the conversations to the concept at hand, to the task, is going to be a fact-based kind of orientation. Okay, so let's talk a little also about, and we'll wrap this up here in this short little video, on what you need to think about in terms of roles that need to be played within your kind of group. And this is probably not an exhaustive list. There's like 4 or so of these kind of task masters. And the thing is, in your group, you may not have one person do each of these. What is going to happen is each of you will probably take part of these responsibilities. One may be a little bit more, the coordinator or the organizer, for instance. This type of person sees the big picture and the end goal very clearly. They understand what is expected of the group and what the deliverable needs to be. They conceptualize steps needed to achieve the final outcome. They have to be strong time managers and human motivators. This might be the leader, but it would probably be everybody would need to have some of this element, but one person may step up and be kind of where the buck stops here. That's the coordinator and the organizer. They certainly have to have super great human skills, like interpersonal communication skills with other humans. But they have to be time managers. They have to really truly understand what the project goal is and how they're going to get there. Okay, technical experts. These folks know theory. They know exactly like how things work relative to the goal. They understand and they can justify the content that's delivered. So if it's a project and the final project calls for a recommendation, they understand why that recommendation is made. They justify how it's made. They can walk through the details of the technical aspects of the project theoretically and pragmatically. They verify also that the content is accurate and valid. So when the final project is submitted, there's not misaligned theory that's trying to explain why the group is making this decision, but it doesn't make sense because that's, they're the technical expert. They know the knowledge. They have the skills and the knowledge base to explain exactly why things are the way they are in your project. Okay, writers and speakers, these might be your communicators. They're incredibly attent to detail. They can write and craft messages quite well, and nuanced messaging is an important craft. So if you have an audience you're giving a speech to or oral presentation, then understanding how that presentation is organized and what goes where and how it's going to be said and the words that are used and the visuals that are used to explain things, those are all crisp and clean. They make sense. They're concise according to the audience that you have. In a written document, it's organized and structured well. There are no typos. There's no grammatical errors. Everything is in the same voice. The prose is the same. One section of the paper segues to the next properly. It's not a mismatched jumble of like 5 authors who just put stuff together. That's never a good thing. You need to have one person who organizes all of that and makes sure that whether it's a presentation or whether it's a written document, that it's crafted well for the audience who's going to see it. Okay, and then finally on this list, worker bees. And again, it's probably an expectation that everybody's going to be a worker bee. And some may be more worker bees than others, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. This person steps up and say, listen, just tell me what to do and I'll get it done. They realize that work has to be accomplished. You can't just sit around talking about it. You can't wait to the last minute. It has to be done, and they take the action and the initiative to do it. These folks don't need to be told to do something. They see something needs to be done and they do it. That's the type of person this is. Okay, so there are 4 different types of roles here, really, and this is really a role designation type of a thing. And your group should think about and have a conversation about what your roles will be throughout the entire project. This is not something where these roles shift and change from stage to stage. So for instance, in one stage, you have a coordinator or organizer, and then in the next stage, somebody else is the coordinator and organizer. That doesn't really make sense. It makes sense to share these expectations with each other, but also understand and relent to others. So in other words, if I'm a worker bee, or if I'm the technical expert, I don't have to be the writer and the speaker, and I don't have to craft the message necessarily. I need to accept that somebody else will do that role, and I need to verify that what is being said is technically correct. Um, but that has to, that just has to happen. Those roles have to be defined that way. And there has to be some mutual understanding is the best thing I can think of to help describe that. So, all right, this is just again a brief kind of little overview of teams. I want you to think about this when we, in your projects, when you're talking to your employers, your supervisors, your professors, then you should be able to talk to them about how these roles are defined, how you're going to communicate with each other, what type of structure you're going to have, and those types of team elements. Vitally important. And anyways, let me know if you have any questions. Hope you are able to employ this with your group. Thank you for your time, and talk to you soon.